Do 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 do. Here we are. We're streaming today. Here we are. We're streaming today. Here we are. That's what I'll say. Here we are. Bum 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 bum. The goat, as promised. Oh, peanut butter Beatrice. That's a beautiful thing to say. Your favorite show? Oh man, the stakes could not be higher, peanut butter Beatrice. I'm panicking now because the pressure's on. So this week for me, like, I feel like these last couple of months have straight up been like Jesus take the wheel. Like, I've just straight up been like, forget about anything that I thought was like, forget about the hustle mindset, forget about the grind set, forget about all that kind of stuff. If my life is going to work out, it's just going to straight up be like, Jesus take the wheel. And guess what? Jesus take the wheel. Like, I'm using Christian language, but that's how it feels. It really is just like, all right, universe, are you gonna do it, or is it just not gonna happen? And it looks like it's happening. Lots of people have all of a sudden started contacting me about going and reading books. And that's just something that I'm doing all of the sudden. That I go to a care home, read a book. I've done private readings for people, read a book. I've got connected to like a network, and their whole thing is to contact care homes and get people connected to entertainment venues and things like this. And so I'll be through them going to go read a book, and that's going to be what I'm doing, and I'm just going to like make money doing that. And I have almost like no responsibility for any of that happening. Like, literally, I think the only thing that I've actually done through this process is just say yes. That's all. Just like, yep, I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that. Of course, yep. And that's it. That's everything I've done the entire time. Austin, good to see you. Compton wants to get right into it, of course. These are strange times, and we are going through it all together in a very weird, strange environment. The pendulum is swinging the other way. Like, we're having this Trump fascist moment, Elon Musk throwing up the Nazi salute, Joe Rogan acting as a Nazi apologist on behalf of Elon Musk. Can you believe people thought that was a Nazi salute? Here's a still frame that we'll use as opposed to the full image, and they show somebody like waving like this, and they catch the one frame when their arm is kind of at the correct angle. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is straight up going up there and just like, bam! And you can see it on his face. He's just like, yeah, Nazism is cool. Austin writes, hopefully Zoran can do the things he promises and not turned out to be like the rest of the sock dance. He will. Like, he is constrained by the system he is within, right? Like, that here at the Canadian Commie, we remind everyone that the core issue with what is happening is a systemic issue. It's a systemic issue. That you can elect all of the nice people you like. You can elect all of the well-meaning, good-hearted, non-corrupt people you like. The system is what's at issue. The system is what's at issue. And until we have like a serious, real, open, societal conversation about the nature of and the structure of the system that we are in, we're always going to fail to meet the moment. We're always going to fail to meet the moment. Because it doesn't matter how good-hearted you are if the system is designed to crush you. It's designed to do that. And the only way that we are going to escape it, or alter it, or change it, or move away from it, or whatever language you like to use here for moving forward into the future, is to fundamentally change the nature of that system. And in my view, that begins with the nationalization of the banks. That if you're not nationalizing your banks, then everything is just dickering around at the edges. And you can, like, dicker around on the edges in a way that is positive. Sure. Like, $1 is better than no dollar, right? But if you really want to fundamentally alter what's going on in this society, it's got to begin with bank nationalization. Yeah, we'll see what he can do. It really is that simple. I'll say it over and over and over again, just like Obama. Culturally important. Culturally important. He's a Muslim mayor of New York, the first Muslim mayor of New York. Culturally important. And that I think is a fair thing to say. That it does indicate that America is becoming more diverse in its worldview, becoming more accepting in its worldview, that while there is this small group of people who are screaming their heads off about immigrants and foreigners, the majority are like, yeah, all right, and they're fine with it. That really the core issue that people are facing right now is affordability. And here in Canada, that's gotten so obvious that even our conservatives have picked up that call. That affordability is the word that's being used. Like, no, you can't afford the rent, you can't afford your groceries, you can't afford your basic bills. It's kicked off a whole conversation in the society about whether or not everybody should have access to basic resources, which in my view is just about as disgusting as it gets. Right? It's gross that there is anybody even thinking that somebody should not have access to food and shelter. And yet we're seeing that a large section of the society thinks this way. A large section of the society thinks that there's a certain type of person or creates a rationalization for why a person should not have access to food and shelter. And that, to me, is the center of the moment. It's the center of what's going on in the society. That if you are a person walking around justifying in some way the poverty, the impoverishment, the homelessness of another person, then you're a Nazi. And there's just no other language to use anymore. Right? Like, you're not a Nazi hyperbolically. Like, you're a Nazi because you're a Nazi. Conton writes, "Oh my God, I'm crashing the hell out. Liberals are so unbelievably chauvinistic. They win a mayoral election and then call Kim and Xi dictators. God almighty, just go away." Yeah. Like, this is a big reason why the West and Westerners generally are no longer really being taken seriously in the world, because they're so clownish and dumb. That, like, this whole dictators line, right? There's a firmer argument in regards to North Korea, I think, because the Kim family does have, like, a fairly entrenched power structure, and they're fairly entrenched in that society. But it's not like the West has a leg to stand on in regards to criticizing North Korea. The situation North Korea finds itself in, or I should say the unoccupied territories of Korea find itself in, is largely because of the West. And that if the West had its view, North Korea would be a vassal state just like South Korea is, and would be experiencing a population decline, its citizens living in essentially wage slavery. It's pretty clear to me that the criticisms that are directed towards North Korea essentially are rooted in the idea that how dare they fight back? How dare they fight against us? How dare they find some kind of structure, some kind of ruling system in order to defend themselves from Western aggression? How dare they do that? Baldy, good to see you. But if you're trying to tell me that Xi Jinping is a dictator, like, if you're literally standing up in front of me and telling me that Xi Jinping is a dictator, then you're illiterate and stupid. Like, just dumb. Like, you're just a dumb person, and at this point it's, like, clownishly obvious how dumb you are. That the Chinese people hold elections. They vote people into the National People's Congress. The National People's Congress is a system of political vetting that Westerners don't like. That to me is the big reason why they're so against, why liberals generally are so against the Chinese system, is because it actually trains politicians, and it actually has a system that self-selects, and it has a system that says, okay, we're not going to allow a game show host to be voted the leader of the country, right? Like, the American system allows a game show host to be elected the leader of a country. Not just the leader of a country, the leader of the country with the strongest military and the strongest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Like, that's a clownish system, right? And so anytime they say Xi Jinping is a dictator, it's just projection. It's just them being ashamed of their own system that has these awful, terrible outcomes, and how embarrassed they are, right? How embarrassed they are. And they should be embarrassed. Like, Donald Trump and these Republicans are, first and foremost, primarily embarrassing. Like, they're scary, to be sure, but they're also just, like, clownishly embarrassing. Like, they're not intelligent people. And this, to me, again, is, like, why having a structural conversation, I think, is going to become so important. Because clearly what has happened is that the system as it's been set up, the system was set up by people who knew exactly what they were doing. It was set up by people who said aloud on paper, and you can read it, we want to make sure that power stays within the hands of the wealthy, and so here's the system that we're going to create in order to ensure that that happens. And they did so structurally. So it's structurally impossible for anyone but rich people to get involved in the political system. And and as the generations have gone on, this reality, this structurally built-in reality to the system, has been forgotten, even by the people who are benefiting from it. And so what you've ended up with is a group of people who are, in essence, true believers. They truly believe that they are where they are because of their own responsibility-minded, hard-working grind set, as opposed to just the natural product of operating within a structure that benefits them. And we're not actually having a serious conversation at all about the structural realities of the electoral system, the structural realities of the economy. And until we actually do start having those serious conversations about the structural nature of our society, and the outcomes that structure produces, we're just going to keep ending up with these clowns. No. Hold on. This might help. I just need to get a new mic, man. I just don't have any money right now. That's just the hard truth. I just don't have the money to replace this mic. Long Defiant says, I wonder how long until Mamdani is a total disappointment. Only took 18 months for AOC. Anyone taking odds? Yeah, I just don't get your hopes up. That's all. Just don't get your hopes up. Like, if Mamdani can even lower the fare price of transit in the city, I would consider that a pretty major success, given how calcified and how entrenched power structures have become. Like, I don't think he's going to manage, like, free grocery services or anything like this, because that involves actually building institutional power. And if there's anything that the modern capitalist despises more than anything, it's institutional power. They don't want to see any institute, like we're here in Canada, we're going through a period under Mark Carney of stripping institutional power. There's actually, like, a really interesting moment happening here in Canada that's kind of going under the radar because of the Mamdani victory, which of course is like taking cultural attention, because it's a big cultural moment. But here in Canada, so the Liberals only needed 3 seats. They were 3 seats away from having a majority government. That basically means that they get to rule without any checks or balances or anything. They could pass any legislation they want through the House and send it to the Senate. And they've only been 3 seats away. And very recently we had 2 Conservative MPs leave the Conservative Party and join the Liberal Party. They crossed the floor, as the nomenclature goes, that they've left the Conservative Party and they've become part of the Liberal Party, which is, for some reason, allowed and legal. That means that the Liberals are 1 seat away from having their majority government. And right now, and the reason why that's so important at this moment is that the Liberals are trying to pass their budget, and according to the rules of the electoral system, if the budget does not pass, that's a vote of no confidence, and it triggers an election. So it is possible in this moment that because of a single vote and a single seat here in Canada, that we might have another election very quickly. And of course, there's some speculation as to whether or not Mark Carney wants that outcome to occur, because it gives the Liberals another opportunity to strike at getting a majority government, which is what they want, because the goal is to entrench capital as much as possible and to decimate institutional power as hard as possible. Like, as the budget stands right now, that's essentially what it does, is that it basically hands money to the richest people in Canada while decimating institutional power through service cuts. That's the neoliberal agenda, is to just ensure that there's no such thing as institutional power in the society, and that every citizen is essentially at the mercy of a small group of wealthy psychopaths, the Epstein class. And that's really the goal. Yeah, as to the mic, the truth is that the wires are fraying. So it looks like it's a nice mic, but the wires are getting all frayed and everything's like, it's old. Like, I've had this mic maybe for 10 years. So I just need to replace the mic. Like, it's just how it goes. You're not the first person to kind of comment on the quality of the mic. You won't be the last. I just don't have the money to replace it. So if you'd like to see it replaced, be sure to donate. Like, share, subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. Let people know that I exist and that I'm happening. This, of course, leads me to the obvious conclusion about Canadian politics. XD, good to see you. JT, good to see you too. Baldy, I'm sure I said hello, but I'm saying hello to you again because I don't remember if I said hello. Hello. Is that the Liberals and the Conservatives are essentially the same party. Like, there's no difference between these two. That at this point it's just vibes. You're literally just vibing and basically being like, well, these guys, like this, the Conservatives are the straight white male party, so I'm gonna vote Liberal for their diversity stance. Meanwhile, the Liberals are basically gutting diversity services across Canada, like in an effort to sort of quote unquote balance the budget because we don't have enough inches to build the building. Jeff, good to see you. Like, the sort of madness of the moment is really captured, in my view, in the reality of the Liberal and the Conservative Party. Like, the Liberal Conservative Party, which is one party, really, and now you've literally got people leaving the Conservative Party and crossing over to the Liberal Party because there's no ideological difference between the two. They're the same party. And that party is the party of capitalism. The only real difference is how much, like, do you think they're gross or not? Like, do you think that they're icky? Like, do the Conservatives give you the ick? Right? And that's it. So if you're like, oh, those Conservatives give me the ick, then you vote Liberal. But in terms of social policy, economic policy, any policy really you like, they're in total lockstep agreement with how things should be run. So if you're voting Liberal, and right now, triggering election would be not a bad idea for Mark Carney, because the Conservatives are in a bit of a fracas. right? That they're having like an odd contentious moment with Polyev. Stephen Harper recently said that Polyev should be replaced, right? That's not a small statement, because the Conservative Party still is in many ways Stephen Harper's party. Not that the Conservatives have somebody to replace Polyev with. Like, who replace him with who? Like, who's this person that you're talking about? And the NDP are basically a dead party. They've been completely decimated. They have no leader. They've betrayed their basic fundamental principles. They stand for nothing. They are a nothing organization. And so another election will probably just entrench that. We'll just make it more concrete in the minds of Canadians that the NDP are a party that once used to have principles and was valuable to Canadians, but is now being discarded as a shell of its former self, having been completely gutted by the exact same principles that both the Liberals and the Conservatives run on. And then you have the Greens, right, which is essentially just the Elizabeth May party. The moment Elizabeth May dies, so too does the Green Party, which are basically just like Conservatives, but hey, maybe the environment. There is no leftist party in Canada. There's no leftist politics in Canada. We're basically reaping what we sow here. That we're getting to the point now where it's pretty obvious that the core issue with what's going on is that the populace wants it to be this way. That the populace has been convinced. Like there's no class consciousness in Canada. 0%. Like, I am the class consciousness of Canada. It's literally just me. And, like, the few listeners that I have. But in terms of, like, actual class consciousness that exists across Canada, there's just none. It just doesn't exist. Ryan Century over on Twitch says, is Canada even a leftist country? We have had in our history a history of leftism, but that's done. That's finished. We've definitely smothered that. Like, back in the 70s, there was literally, like, communist people in Parliament. Like, the Communist Party of Canada had seats in Parliament. The NDP, the New Democratic Party, called itself a socialist party and called itself a workers' party, and has over the decades, especially after Jack Layton died, basically smothered that, and they removed socialism from their platform. They're no longer a serious party to be taken seriously, because if you're going to vote for the NDP on the principles that the NDP put forward, just vote Liberal. We don't need an orange Liberal party. And Ryan continues, so there's nothing really to fight for. Yeah, we're in an every man for themselves sort of moment, right? That if your objective is to get involved in the electoral system, you're going to have to build your own parties, or at least build coalitions to convince people within parties to actually change policies. Because the moment that exists here in North America, I have described for several years now as a moment of extraction and abandonment. There is no long-term thinking happening in Canada or America right now. There is no planning for the future. There is no idea of what, there's no vision for the future. There's no vision of unification. There's none of that. Everything is all about extract as much wealth as possible from the people that we can at this moment. And then once we get to the point where we can no longer extract wealth, abandon them completely. And that's the moment of what's going on in America and in Canada. And that is a policy, and that is an idea that exists in the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP, the Democrats, the Republicans. It doesn't matter which party you vote for. All parties are structuring everything to extract as much wealth as possible and then abandon you. And that's by policy, on purpose, on behalf of the wealthy. That the rich people in the country, their objective is to just get as much money from you and then leave you. And that's their stated goal. That's their stated agenda. It's not a secret. And it's just people are kind of in this eyes wide open, like bewildered, like it can't possibly be the case that the same people that are committing a genocide in Gaza and raping children on Jeffrey Epstein's island would abandon me. Yeah, they will. They'll completely abandon you, and they are, and that's the goal. So your objective right now. So you're 20 right now. How old will I be before seeing a leftist party? You won't. You won't. Just you won't. You won't see it. You'll have to build it. Like, there are people doing it, but it won't be televised and it won't be advertised. It'll be the kind of thing where, like, there'll be nothing for a few decades, and then all of the sudden there'll be this massive political upsurge. Your goal right now as a 20-year-old is to get to know your neighbors really well and to build economic ties and political coalitions with them. Like, create a tenant union, create a gardening project. Like, get involved with your neighbors, the people who are literally next door to you. Like, those people are going to be more politically important to you than anybody moving forward. And what if you can create voting blocks, if you can create political affiliations and political blocks of people where you are all saying with one voice, this is the policy that we want to see, then it doesn't really matter who gets into power, because if they want to sway you and if they want your support, then they'll have to do what you say. And that's if you want to get involved. Ryan says, damn, I got to get out of Alberta. It's the same everywhere, my man. It's the same everywhere. Like, this policy of extraction and abandonment, this policy of the destruction of institutional power, the destruction of the civil society, is happening by policy at the highest possible level of your society. It's if there is an institution still standing at the end of this, it will be a small group of capitalists screaming at the top of their lungs, work harder. Baldy McNose here with the $5 donation. Thanks for the donation, Baldy. I really do appreciate it, my man. Thank you so much. Liberals are the good cop, conservatives are the bad cop, I guess. Yep, that's the structure of the piece. And, like, until we get to a point as a society where we come to realize that the liberals and the conservatives and the Democrats and the Republicans are allies who work for the same people towards the same objectives, and that those objectives are obvious, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. Like, and that's why this whole back and forth bickering about, like, oh, Mamdani got in, and wow, the Democrats had a big thing, and oh my goodness, and oh, we're fighting back against Trump. Oh my God, yeah, ha ha, rah rah rah. Yeah, okay. It's all just like vibes. It's all just like Trump is gross and icky, and Gavin Newsom is a statesman, and they have the exact same ideas and the same policies. Like, the Democrats are subtler about it. Like, they're more subtle. They understand how to sort of game the system a little bit better and to present a little bit cleaner, right? Like, Trump never really cared about presenting himself as a statesman, right? As a stable leader. It's just not something he ever cared to do. Where the Democrats do. They do care to do that. The GOAT writes, liberals are just progressive conservatives. Easy for a con to switch party if they don't want to associate with the cranks of the right. I think it's just a financial decision. I think that they basically were given a sweetheart deal. Like, the person who crosses the aisle to join the Liberal Party to make a majority is going to make like $10 million doing it. Like, it'll set them for the rest of their lives, for sure. It might even be like Senate appointments. That's something that has happened in the past. Just hey, come over here and we'll make you a senator. Here in Canada, senators are appointed by the Prime Minister, and it's a lifetime appointment. And it's something that people will go for. DM, good to see you, my man. Good evening, John. Will communist Marxist mayor... Sorry, dude. Like, it's just so funny to believe that Mamdani is actually a communist or a Marxist of any sort. Will he finally implement a basic income to all New Yorkers? No. Or will he capitulate to capital like Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang? Yeah, he'll capitulate to capital. Mamdani is not bigger than capitalism. He's not bigger than the system of capital. Like, he is constrained by the realities of the system of capital. And as long as the system of capital is largely privatized, held by like apartheid babies and people talking about the Antichrist, and as long as capital is in the hands of these psychopaths, basically, Mamdani can only do so much. Like, really, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if Mamdani can manage to lower the fare in New York, if that's his achievement, then that's where my expectations sort of are. And I don't even expect him to be able to do that, right? So if when Mamdani leaves office, the fare has gone down for transit, I'll consider that to be a great achievement, given the incredible uphill battle that he has to fight. And this is sort of assuming that he's actually interested in fighting it, right? Like, he is going to be just another Obama, right? Like, he's going to go in there, he's got his big rhetoric, his big statements, big cultural moment of like, we want change, we want something else. Okay, cool. Then he's going to get in there, and if he's lucky, and if you're lucky, his big achievement will be lowering the fare 50 cents. So set your expectations there, and really, like, set your expectations there and be like, yeah, and he probably won't even get that done. Oh, Wing. Wing's come crawling back. Wing. I love it. This guy. What I love about you, Wing, is that you're obviously, like, curious. You're obviously like a Trumper type, but you're obviously like, what's going on with this guy? You want to have your worldview challenged, and so you keep on crawling back for more, Wing. All right, let's hear the contradiction, Wing. Because you're the expert, my man. You know everything about Marxism. Ryan says, to be honest, I don't know what to believe. My parents are full of fear-mongering. Yeah, dude. So we are in a moment of mass hysteria. That's something I think that's really important to remember, Ryan. That we, include myself, you, everybody, okay? So just like, this is a moment of high emotions. No rational thinking is happening right now. We are caught in something that is more akin to a religious ideology. That once you begin to look around yourself and begin to have conversations with people around you with the idea in your mind that you are having a religious conversation first and foremost, that you are having a conversation that is about emotion and spirit and religion first, things do begin to make a little bit more sense, because the system of capital has configured itself to be a religion first and foremost. That money is a god that we're all supposed to worship. We have tied our survival to appeasing this god, and the people who appease the god the best or go to work for the god are the people who get rewarded. The Prime Minister of Canada is literally a former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. All right, Wing, let's hear it. Knock me out. Oh, so let me finish with this, Ryan. So I think the best thing to do when you're talking to people like your parents, who are influential people in your lives, right? You care about your parents, you love your parents, is to recognize and realize that they are in a state of hysteria. They're not saying the things they're saying because they've thought them out. They're not saying the things they're saying because they've reasoned it and that there's like this rational thinking happening. They're saying the things they're saying because they're scared and they're caught in a system, they're caught in a moment of hysteria. And we are in cultural hysteria. We're watching the society turn against itself. We're watching the collapse happen. And everybody's scrambling and panicking as to what to do about it. And a lot of people are like, vote Democrat. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to help. Like, you're just painting the barn blue instead. And the barn is still on fire. So a spirit of forgiveness, a spirit of calmness, and really focus on your own emotional state. Take up meditation, take up that kind of thing, because calming yourself, getting yourself into a moment of just like, okay, everything is fine. Everything is fine. Because the truth is that on your day-to-day, like your day-to-day, moment by moment, things are actually fine. Like if an outside observer was looking at your life, the outside observer would probably be like, this guy's doing great. This guy's doing great, right? It's just that we have this heavy anxiety around the collapse of the civilization, which is definitely happening. All right, Wing Wing. Wing Wing writes, I used to be left-leaning, but I believe that's because I was black and saw information about slavery in school, and growing up on social media, seeing things about inclusion, respect, alike narratives, right? Everything made sense to me from the age of 12 onwards until I started studying economics this year, and it opened my eyes. Yeah, they saw the Ayn Rand sign. So when you say studying economics, right, basically modern economics is like a strand of phrenology. It's like modern, so Milton Friedman-esque or neoliberal economics is to economics as phrenology is to neuroscience. If you're not familiar what phrenology is, right? Phrenology was a theory, a neuroscientific theory that existed in the 1900s, that you could make conclusions about a person and about the type of person a person would be based on measuring their cranium, that you would literally like measure sections of their skull, and that would say things about the nature of that person. This, of course, was used for racism and for all kinds of things. This theory was very popular. Queen Victoria literally held a symposium about this. It was every single university had a phrenology department. So it's an extremely popular neuroscience that existed. And then it was debunked. It's just debunked. Like somebody just wrote a paper and was just like, yeah, this doesn't actually exist. This isn't a real thing. It doesn't predict outcomes. And so the whole thing kind of fell apart. Right, which is how the sciences are supposed to work. Someone has a theory, it stands for a minute, somebody says, no, this isn't accurate, and so it goes away. Well, what we're experiencing is a theory of neoliberal economics that has popped up and has been debunked, by the way. Like, neoliberal economics has failed. It's failed on the face of it, very nakedly, in a very 1 + 1 = 2 sort of way. It's just being held on to, which is why I say that now it's a religion. That it's not being held on to as a science, it's being held on to as a religion. And the outcome of it is that because it's operating in a certain way, it's going to have certain outcomes, and those outcomes are not going to match what the religious ideology says. Wing Wing says, I'm still in my first semester of economics. So yeah, you're being indoctrinated with the religion of neoliberal economics. That's what's happening to you. Right? That you're going to your class and your neoliberal professor is indoctrinating you into neoliberal economics, which is a religion, right? That the economics departments across all universities are essentially a priesthood. It's the reason why there's also business schools. Have you noticed? Like, if your economics department was actually teaching economics, why would you also need a business school? And the reason why that separation happened is because the capitalist class came to understand that while it's good to have a priesthood, it's good to have a bunch of people espousing the ideology of capitalism, the religious ideology of capitalism. We also do need people to operate businesses who actually do have some kind of grounding in reality, but not enough of a grounding in reality that they actually have a scientific observation of economics. And so you have business school that essentially teaches people to become managers of capital, and then you have economics, which takes the purpose of creating a scientific worldview of economics and twists it into a religion. And that's the whole point, right? So you are currently in the stage of being indoctrinated into a system of neoliberal religious capitalism. Yeah, neoliberal theory governs most economic decisions in the Western world. That's not true once you step outside the system of Western capital, because the religious ideology of neoliberalism isn't more powerful than the entire human species. And it can't possibly spread everywhere, right? It's just that it's so heavily armed and so willing to destroy everything in its path in order to get its way that it has to be contended with, right? Like if you're living in Africa, you have to contend with these neoliberal religious acolytes. You just have to, because they'll come into your country and blow it up. Like they're literally committing a genocide in Sudan right now. Not to mention the genocide in Congo. We got some first-time commenters over on Twitch. What's up, Uncle? Love the beard. Thank you. Hope you're here to be beautiful. Please feel free to ask questions. Neoliberal theory governs most of the economic decisions, and yet we are still here. I realize what the reality is sad. Unfortunately, we won't be able to feed everyone yet. Yeah, I mean, we have the resources to feed everyone, right? The reason why we aren't feeding everyone at the moment is because of the actual structure of what capitalism actually is. That a small group of people hoard all the resources, and we are put to work for them to gain access to those resources. Right? That's something that your neoliberal professor will not teach you. You will not be taught the actual reality of the actual relationship that you actually have to actual capital that actually exists in the actual world. Right? Because your professor is not interested or inclined to teach you about the world. He's not actually interested in teaching you about reality. He's interested in indoctrinating you into a religious worldview. That there is a small group of people, the Epstein class, the psychopath class, the capitalist class, right, who have literally trillions of dollars of assets. They literally have access. They have access to so many resources that they actually waste most of them, right? In North America, 40% of the food that's created is thrown away, right? That's just like a level of corruption and a level of waste that is unheard of. It's outrageous. You just have capitalists pouring out milk, destroying food wherever they go, and the sorry, I just have to pause. Wings that Rwanda is a neoliberal country in Africa that experienced significant growth. Yeah, because there wasn't a capitalist-backed genocide that happened in Rwanda. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Like, these religious acolytes, dude. These religious acolytes. Yeah, please read Capital, Wing. Yeah. Yeah, the neoliberal religion says if my boss is blessed with riches and power, then so will I. Yep. The president of Uganda openly supports neoliberal measures. You've never heard of a CIA coup in your life. Got it. There's a network of neoliberals in Africa and African authors. Yeah, it's called the CIA, my man. like, come on, dude. Like, you can't be this clueless, right? Like you can't be this clueless. Like, you can't be this disconnected from reality, right? Like, you can't be this out of step with what's actually happening in these countries. You're literally like the president of Uganda, as if he's not completely backed by Western capital. Like this, the colonial period just didn't happen in your worldview. It's crazy. It's actually crazy that like you're genuinely trying to pitch the idea that there's never been any colonialization that happened in Africa whatsoever. That there's no political force that has been bought up by the system of capital. Like. That the people of Uganda want the president to be this neoliberal guy because they support him and love him. Like, it's crazy. Every country has neoliberals and leftists, whether poor or rich. Yeah, because that's the central contradiction of capital, right? Like, you're stumbling on the actual central contradiction of capital. That a small group of wealthy resource holders hoard those resources and force us to work to gain access to those resources. That's the central core. And what we're discussing is whether or not you and people like you have something called class consciousness, which you don't, which is why you're susceptible to the religious ideology, right? Because you don't actually have a class consciousness. You're not actually aware of the classes that exist in your society, that you view economics, neoliberal economics especially, as a force of nature. That the rules of neoliberal economics have been presented to you as if it's scientific truism, that these things must occur, as opposed to this is the ideology of the pedophile class. See, Wing Wing, when you make statements like this, it makes me realize that you don't actually know anything about communism, right? You say communist theory is beautiful, but it's about the state. No, it isn't. That there has been communist writings about the nature of the state because the state exists and it must be contended with, right? But the amount of theory surrounding the state can be limited basically to one book, which is Lenin's writing, right? Yeah, Wing Wing, I confess I haven't read much about it, but I'll study it at some point. Yeah, start with the principles of communism, right? Frederick Engels, the principles of communism, because that's going to get you into actually reading about real economics that actually exists and get you away from this religious ideology of neoliberal economics, right? Economics, quote unquote. Like, yeah, it's so very, very obvious. I'm going to study it, but it will be about why it didn't work out during college. So you're just setting yourself up to fail, basically. You're just setting yourself up to be ignorant and illiterate. Like, and to make the claim that communism didn't work out is an extremely odd claim to make. Like, you have to begin with that conclusion in order to reach that conclusion. Because communism has been resoundingly successful. Like, resoundingly successful. If you were living in countries that were being led by communist governments during their period, when communists were in control of their governments, you would be in awe. You would be shocked at what is possible. That what a organized group of communists can actually achieve in your country. Like, for God's sakes, the USSR went from being like agrarian wage slaves, literally using hand tools and oxen, to being the first people into space in a single generation. Like, and so that someone like you, who doesn't know anything about the subject, can stand up and say that communism didn't work. What are you talking about? It's just embarrassing. It is. It's just an embarrassing thing to say out loud. Answer me a simple question. Do you think that outsourced government management generates more results and positive impact than private management? So, this phrase that you're using, outsourced government management, sounds to me just like it sounds like the same thing, right? Outsourced government management. What is that? Outsourced government management is basically just giving a contract to a private company, right? And then basically walking away and saying, okay, private company is going to take care of it. We're not going to give any oversight. Let the free market decide, right? So you have been so heavily indoctrinated into this religious ideology that you actually think that two things that are very much the same are different, and that is the sphere of your study. You're not allowed to actually step outside of that. That's the barrier, or that's the limit of your discourse, right? The limit of the discourse and the limit of what you're allowed to think is appropriate is just direct private ownership or the government giving a private owner a contract. And that's the only solution that you're allowed to even discuss, right? Tell me you're in a cult without telling me you're in a cult, my man. Like, you're not actually allowed to say the government creates its own institution and that institution actually operates and does the service and creates the service. right? You're not even allowed to contemplate that. That's not even a question that's put on the table for you, right? Like, here in Canada, we have several crown corporations, and those crown corporations are mandated to run and operate services that exist in Canada. And that's just simply a better, cleaner, easier, cheaper way to deliver services. It just creates it's a better service producer. But you're not allowed to even think about it, right? It's not a question your neoliberal priests will teach you. You're just not allowed to think about it, right? Because you're in a cult. And the cult wants you to think a certain way. And if you think that certain way, you'll be rewarded. Like, don't get me wrong, Wing Wing. If you just tell the cult what it wants to hear, you'll be rewarded. Americans are not moving to Canada. I mean, first of all, yes, they are. But so what? I don't understand. Like, there are certain forces that are stronger than economics. Like, I have family here. I found somebody I love. I'm from here. Right? Like, these are forces that supersede your basic economic principles. And it's not really evidence of anything. So it's just like a grasping at straws coming out of the mind of a cultist, right? I need a reason for why this guy is talking nonsense, and here's something I'll grab onto. Yeah, Wing Wing is back. Being a little bit more open about how little he knows about the subject, which is good. Dave writes, it's funny because here in the West they're always saying communists and socialists doesn't work, but the same thing, but at the same time saying that capitalist is the best system. Yeah, which maybe 20 years ago or even like 15 years ago you could have said with some credibility, but there's no credibility left to this. Like, everything it's a total disaster. Hull, good to see you. They can love capitalism all they want, but it's crushing down worldwide, and that's a fact. People hate it. Yeah. But it's getting obvious that it really does require a lot of effort to maintain the cult. Wing Wing basically regurgitates the propaganda. After a century-long inflationary spiral, Venezuela adopted neoliberal measures that drastically reduced inflation in the country, although it remains in double digits. So tell me you don't know anything about Venezuela without telling me you don't know anything about Venezuela, right? So the Chavistas, Hugo Chavez, basically takes Venezuela over and begins enacting essentially socialist measures, nationalizing the oil industry was a big one. Yeah, is Wing Wing Steven Pinker or something. And Hugo Chavez at one point was kidnapped by the CIA. The CIA is obviously attempting to destroy Venezuela's economy. The current Trump administration has outright put a bounty on the current leader of Venezuela. This idea that Venezuela adopted neoliberal measures is just stupid. Like, that's just a stupid thing to say. It's just wrong. Like, literally, at some point, 1 + 1 must equal 2. And you're just coming in here with cultist nonsense. So, again, maybe start asking questions, right? Like, I'm going to give you some life advice here, Wing Wing. And I've said it before, but I think we've finally crossed the threshold, right? And I can finally start saying these things to you directly. You obviously are illiterate, obviously. And you've admitted as much in the chat that you haven't actually read anything about the subject. You obviously don't know what you're talking about. Very obviously. And so stop making statements based in what you believe to be fact, because you're wrong. Like, really obviously wrong, my man. The better path for you forward in life, generally, not just here, but out in the world, is to start asking questions. Is to start saying, oh, I thought it was like this. Can you explain to me this? Right? So, wait, what about Venezuela? Venezuela is socialist, and it seems to be going through some problems. Right? That kind of prompting, even if you have in your mind an idea of what you believe to be right, which is wrong, obviously, by asking the question, you can have that challenged without kind of revealing how dumb you are about the subject. Because, like, this statement that you've made, after a century-long inflationary spiral, Venezuela adopt neoliberal measures. First of all, no, it didn't. Second of all, your statement has completely obliterated the, like, decades and decades and decades of warfare that the United States has inflicted on Venezuela. Like, it has completely obliterated the history of Hugo Chavez. It has completely obliterated the history of Maduro. It completely obliterates the actual history of what's actually going on in Venezuela in favor of some dumb talking point that you probably heard on Fox News once. Like, please stop. Because I can only cringe so much. Yeah. JT, what's the argument that America is happy? Yeah. The one time they refer to material conditions, Americans not leaving the U.S., and they use it to just support capitalist oppression. Yeah, exactly. Content, I'm so confused. If communism is by design a failure, why does it take trillions of dollars for liberal thought to make sure we understand that? Why did it take war? Yeah, why are we funding? Like, why are we fighting it so much? Right? Like, why are we fighting it so much? Because if it just fails by design, it should just collapse, right? We should look at it and we should be like, oh yeah, nice idea, but that's going to fail, and then leave it alone. And then when it fails, have them crawl back to you. Because that's not what happens. They don't come crawling back. The system actually works. They actually create superior models and superior systems. Like, here's a really clear example of how communist power structures are overwhelming your free market idea completely. Like, your free market, right, quote unquote free market, has had to put significant tariffs, significant taxes, significant government measures, right, on EVs, electric vehicles from China, right? And the reason why they've had to do that is that if Chinese EVs were allowed into America and into the West generally with no tariffs or no anything, no one would ever buy an American-made car ever again. Because the Chinese can just make them better, faster, stronger. Pick a department, it's just better. Right? And so all of a sudden when it comes to defending yourself against a foreign market, well, the free market doesn't really exist. Now we can manipulate it all we want. And that's completely fine, and that's completely normal, and that makes all the sense. And here's the justification. No, I'm not in a cult. Baldy again with another $5 donation, bud. I really appreciate it. Not to get off topic, but are we witnessing a Nazi civil war between Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes? And here's some more for the mic. I appreciate it, my man. I think that what you're seeing there is just a conflict between Zionists and non-Zionists. That's it. That Nick Fuentes is not a Zionist. He's just a Nazi. And Ben Shapiro is a Zionist. And so Nick Fuentes is willing to stand up and say, man, the state of Israel, eh? The Jews. And Ben Shapiro is highly critical of that position. And let's make no mistake here, guys. Like, the Jews are getting scapegoated again. Like, it's happening. I'm seeing it in popular media. I'm seeing it in social media. That there's analogies being drawn up. There's stories being told. There's people whose TikToks are getting very popular, and they're basically just standing up and being like, man, the Jews did it to us again, eh? Hitler was right. Like, that's happening. It's a real thing that's occurring in your society today. And so, yeah, there's going to be a conflict between these two forces, because it's basically the forces of Zionist Nazis should be in control versus we should round up the Jews, including the Zionists. And that's basically what's happening. And in both cases, it's a complete negative. Wing Wing writes, communism is not something that needs to be fought. Then why have the Americans done nothing but do that, my man? Like, what was the Cold War period all about? What was the McCarthy period all about? They literally fought the Vietnam War and the Korean War saying, we need to staunch the spread of communism. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the Americans and Western capital has done nothing but fight communism in its entire history. Like literally world conflicts. World War II was about destroying communism. So just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. XD writes, literally half the cars in China right now are EVs, and this coincides with a very observable air quality improvement in Shenzhen compared to 10 years ago. Yep. No, the Chinese have just pushed all in on future tech, right? Like, when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, we should do electric vehicles, we should have solar panels everywhere. This is just like really clear, obvious stuff that we should be doing. And then I spent my entire life watching us totally squander that and just do nothing. And then the Chinese were like, yeah, we should do electric vehicles and have solar panels everywhere. And they did it. And it's been extremely successful. So the Western capital is going to continue falling behind, and it's going to continue falling behind in very dramatic, very clear, and very obvious ways. Well, obvious to anybody who's not a cultist. Yeah. Content. Then why was it fought and still fought? Yeah. Wing Wing says, going back to the contradiction, you've never really brought up what that contradiction is in your last live stream. It arose because you didn't reject the market, but at the same time defended public management. It's not a contradiction, first of all. Like, markets exist. It's only a contradiction to you because you're a cultist, right? You've been indoctrinated into a system of thought that believes that capitalism equals markets, right? That's a very convenient mindset for a cultist to have. Because if you can be convinced that a building is an economic system, or a structure or an institution is an economic system, then you don't actually have to engage in what the actual economic system is, right? Markets exist in all economic structures. Markets existed in feudalism. Markets existed in slave cultures, in tribal cultures. Markets exist in monarchies, markets exist in democracies. And why is that the case? Because if you need to buy and sell stuff, go to the market. Like, it's real simple. It's real straightforward, right? There's a market, go over there, buy, sell on the market. Like, that's every society that's ever existed anywhere. And so markets are not emblematic of whether the system is capital or communist or socialist or anything, because markets exist. And you can try to crack down on certain things happening within the market. And if you just shut the market down, then you end up with a black market, right? People want markets. Markets are more akin to just like human behavior than anything, that humans trade with one another, right? Like, they just do. It's just useful to do. That's not capitalism. How public administration and the market coexist within an organization. Can you provide an example? Baldy McNosehair writes, what are your thoughts on the meeting between Mark Carney and with Xi Jinping? Do you think it's nothing burger or a step strengthening Canada and China's relationship? China's perspective of Canada is realist, right? That in a vacuum, in a total vacuum, Canada would of course trade with China. China is the most powerful economy on the planet. They're actually producing goods that people want. They are the future of global leadership, for sure. It's just obviously the case. But China is fully aware, and Canada is fully aware for that matter, that we have this enormous albatross hanging around our neck, which is our relationship with the United States, which must exist. It can't not exist. It's right there. Like, we have to deal with them. And so anyone within the Communist Party of China who talks to Canada understands that there is this sort of sense of goodwill and this sense of desire for stronger ties, but they also need to protect themselves, because we can operate as a Trojan horse on behalf of the Americans, and the Americans have made it very clear that they're just a ruthless psychopathic brute stomping around the world, willing to murder and commit genocide against whoever if it gives them anything. It doesn't even need to be money at this point. Like, what they're doing in Gaza doesn't make any fucking sense at all. It makes no sense at all. There's literally no reason to do it. And yet they're doing it. And, like, there's some resources in Gaza, but at this point, like, not enough to justify what they're doing. And so Canada and China are trying to have good relations, but they're both aware of what the world is like and what the conditions are like, you know. Canada knows that it can't really hook its wagon onto America's star, especially as America begins to decay and starts to break apart. And they know that, but they can't. They also can't just completely jump ship and go over to China, because America exists and is a ruthless psychopath. Wing Wing says, so you are against the centralized planning of all state-owned enterprises and controlled entities in a centralized socialist state? Oh, it's so tough talking to a cultist. Like, it's tough when you talk to somebody who doesn't actually know what they're talking about, because they throw out these phrases that they think mean things, but they don't mean the things that you know they know. You know what I'm talking about? So you're against the centralized planning of all state-owned enterprises? No. I think that there are many successful examples of centralized planning of state-owned enterprises. The library system is a great example of that, right? Like, why shouldn't we have crown corporations or government-controlled and government-run organizations that are completing a mandate? Like, the fire department operates this way. The military operates this way. So, like, I mean, Joe, good to see you. And controlled entities in a centralized socialist state. So, like, so how can the market exist in a highly controlled environment? So, take a look at what the Chinese have done. The Chinese have shown very clearly that you can have, like, this mixed economy kind of hybrid thing. And what they are showing is that the government needs to control the basic resources and the banks, right? That it doesn't matter if the gap is regulated. Who gives a shit about, like, what style of clothing or what art pieces are being made or whether Xboxes are trading or any of that kind of stuff? That's not what matters, right? And so you have a market. Right? So you can have, like, a McDonald's, and you can have the Gap, and you can have whatever storefront you like, but all of those stores and all of those organizations and all of those companies need to go to the state-owned banks and the state-owned resources in order to operate at the most basic level. And so, sure, you can have your free market doing whatever it wants on the surface, operating in a market capacity. So everybody interacting with that market is like, yeah, this is just a market that we go to and all of this. But if McDonald's starts operating in a way that you don't want them to operate from, you just starve them. You remove their access to capital. You remove their access to financial market, and you remove their access to the resources they need to operate. Right? Which it happens. Wing Wing says, that means you are in favor of a controlled capitalism. Again, like communist theory, that the reality of the world is that capitalism exists and that we have to contend with it. And that we are trying to move away. We're trying to move away from capitalism. But capitalism isn't just going to let you do it. Right? So it's not that I'm in favor of a controlled capitalism. It's that is the process of getting away from capitalism, and we don't have an alternative. There is no alternative to doing it this way, because capitalists are psychopaths that will come into your country and commit a genocide against you. And so you have to negotiate with them, and you have to be aware of who they are and what they're willing to do, right? And, like, that's essentially what the Chinese have done. That the path for the Chinese to free themselves more and more from the system of capital China produces virtually everything it needs. It's struggling with certain things, but sure. It could turn to the market, but it doesn't. I'm very confused by your statement, man. Like, I'm just confused by your statement. Like, why would China do that? It's trying to, oh, I see. It's trying to turn away from the market, but it doesn't. I mean, again, you're just confused because you think that the market is capitalism. That's all. Like, that's all. Like, you just think that the center of capitalism and the center of the conversation is a market because your neoliberal professor has indoctrinated you into a cult. No communist theory anywhere talks this way. This is a strictly capitalist conversation. Like, this is a strictly religious conversation that we're having right now. Because you believe that the center of capitalism is markets. And it isn't. It's just not. Like, the center of capitalism is that resources are hoarded and owned by a private class of citizens. And that those private class of citizens then force us, workers, to work for them to gain access to those resources. That's what capitalism is. Whether that is done through chattel slavery, through direct wage slavery, or through the implementation or the manipulation, rather, of markets, isn't really relevant. Like, it's relevant to observe, to see what is structurally being done, but the existence of the market itself is not capitalism. And I think that's where you're confused. And it seems like it's like entrenched in your mind so heavily that you just can't get away from it. Because it's a religious ideology. Market logic is at the heart of capitalism. No, it's not. It just isn't. Like, it just isn't. Like, were the chattel slavers of the South operating on market principles? No. Right? Like, unless you really want to consider a slave market as a market. But they were owning chattel slaves and using chattel slaves to gain resources for themselves. That had nothing to do with market logic. Like, this religious ideology that you have fallen for, right, is what hamstrings people who actually are attempting to defend the system of capital. Like, you're being trained to be illiterate. You're being trained to be silly. Like, you sound silly. And really what it's doing is it's defanging your capacity to actually have serious conversations about the subject. Like, this is a very silly conversation from my perspective. Like, you, a person who is illiterate and has no idea what they're talking about, believes in a fictional reality in which markets are the center of capital. Nope. Certainly markets exist, like, and they should be discussed, but they're not the center of capital. They're not what capitalism is about. Again, please, I beg you, read the Principles of Communism. Even the Communist Manifesto at this point will help you out. And, like, the capitalists don't care if they have to use a market or not in order to get profit, right? And in fact, you're seeing the modern capitalists, like, Elon Musk doesn't give a shit about the market at all. Elon Musk exists because of his manipulation of the political system. That he has received a bunch of government grants that allow him to do whatever he wants, and he has put himself in bed with the ruling power structure in America. It has literally nothing to do with markets. Wing Wing says the distribution method in capitalism is through sales and supply and demand. I mean, that's the rhetoric, but it doesn't actually work that way. That the distribution method is pretty straightforwardly just through the ownership of government contract and the ownership of political power. DM says, congrats, John, on 2,000 subscribers. Oh, do I have 2,000 subscribers? That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, there's one of the commandments. Yeah, exactly. that usually how capitalists actually increase their profits is by reducing wages and services, right? Like, capitalists go into a... Billionaires are not the dominant consumer market in a society. You're so... Yeah. Condon. Dang, 2000? I remember 120. Yeah, it's true, dude. Yeah. 2000 is a nice number. I like that. So, Wing Wing, all you're doing is revealing more and more that you don't know anything about the subject, right? Like, please, I'm really begging you. You got to take a step back from this market indoctrination, right? That the way the system actually operates is that billionaires dominate and monopolize a resource, right? Like, in your small hometown, Walmart has obliterated all other retailers, right? And they didn't do that because they came in with a superior product or a superior model. They did that because they got enormous government grants from bribing political power to allow them to come in and take over. And they monopolize, and in many ways they destroy your markets, right? That a Walmart is by itself a market that has come in and like planted itself down and obliterated local markets and has monopolized and dominated the market. And it's through that process of monopolization that capitalists actually operate from. This false narrative that you are trying to put forward as if it's true, that capitalists are operating in this market and the market itself is the system of capital, is just a way to get you to not actually have serious discussions about what your society actually looks like. Again, reaffirming what we've always been saying about you, my man. You have been indoctrinated into a cult. This economics thing that you're being taught is a cult. And it's getting really embarrassingly, obviously. Wing Wing says the state loves monopolies. My man. This makes sense considering that socialism itself is the state monopolization of the means of production and the standardization of production. Oh my god, dude. Okay, Wing Wing. You're so embarrassing that if you don't start phrasing your comments in the form of a question, I'm just going to ban you. From now on. I'm limiting the way I'm going to communicate with you because you're so obviously clueless and illiterate. Like, I just don't have the patience for you anymore. It's so clear that you have no idea what you're talking about. It's so clear that you've been indoctrinated into a religious cult. And even worse than that, it's really, really obvious that you're not willing to even consider that as true. Like, you are no different than a flat earther or like a Jesus Christ person who is saying that Jesus is coming back. So if you don't start phrasing your comments in the form of questions, I'm going to ban you. And I'm starting that now. Just because I don't have the... You're just so cringy. Like, you keep talking as if you're an expert, and you're so obviously clueless. Content says, also, I don't mean to be weird, but I don't particularly care about monopolization. Too bad. We break monopolies and not nationalize them. Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds. Like, the state monopolization, we already monopolize, like, state violence has been monopolized, for example, right? Like, the military and the police force monopolizes violence in the society. That the police and the military and these forces are allowed to do whatever they want in regards to violence. And, like, you could make the argument, like, the library has a monopolization on lending books, right? Like, the core of the issue is that we're operating on this profit motive, right? The need to hoard and collect wealth for one another. Wouldn't that be another problem with centralization? What would be another problem with centralization? Yeah, Joe, I'm kind of getting there. Like, it's pretty clear we've got somebody who's taken like one semester in neoliberalism and actually thinks they understand the subject. Mark Jr. writes, capitalism hinders markets more than people realize too, literally destroys small enterprises. Yeah, we watched that happen with the Walmart moment, right? Like when Walmart swept across America, they literally destroyed businesses across America. And it's because a Walmart is itself a market, right? That you have markets operating within smaller communities, right? This business operates this good, it comes from this good comes from this business, right? And they all create what is thought of as a market. And then along comes Walmart with its Chinese connections and its government backing, and it plops itself down in your community and essentially just starves the market. And Walmart even that's not a question, Wing Wing. I'm going to put you in timeout. Feel free to come back next week, Wing Wing. Questions, my man. Yeah, no, I've just got really tired of talking to her to like a religious acolyte completely. Yeah. Not really interested in learning. That's the thing. Like it got pretty obvious that Wing Wing was just trying to like puff his chest out and pretend like he understood a subject when he was just pretty clueless. Like, maybe humble yourself, ask some questions, be a bit more skeptical of what neoliberal capitalism is trying to teach you. Like that's the best part about the conversation. But the neoliberal capitalists say that this is true. Oh, the neoliberal capitalists say that it's true. The people who visit Jeffrey Epstein's island and have sex with little girls and have sex dungeons, they said it was true. Yeah, it's like talking to a wall. I mean, there does come a point where it's like when you give basic instructions and they can't even follow that, forget it. I think some people just want to be illiterate. Like, that's all. Like, the natural inclination of a person is essentially to say that daddy said so, therefore it's correct. Right? Like, if daddy says so, then it's correct. And that's essentially who this Wing Wing guy is. Daddy said so. But daddy said this. It's like, okay, well, daddy lied. Or daddy's as clueless as you are. Because you live in a society that rewards you if you say daddy said this. It's just like a struggle. It's like trying to turn people away from the cave wall in the allegory of the cave, but they go, no, Cops is on. I love this show. Yeah. These are the majority, and it's sad. Well, there's a reason why the society is collapsing, right? And the core reason is because propaganda works, right? Like, propaganda works. It's the reason why they do it. Like, kids like this Wing Wing guy, they go to these courses and they get taught this material, and they just get indoctrinated into a cult. And because it's presented as if it's a science, and because it's like so all-encompassing, and because it's all like so present in the society, it's so ubiquitous in the society, it's so it's everywhere you look, people just assume that it must be the truth. And they'll just happily tell you that they're illiterate, and they'll just happily tell you that they don't have an alternative worldview. and they'll just happily confess to you that they don't know what they're talking about. But then when they present the material, it's like this firm, hard truth. And like this guy Wing Wing's like not any different than a flat earther. He just believes what he believes because he believes it. And no amount of evidence is going to prove otherwise. No amount of homeless encampments, no amount of poverty, no amount of destitution, no amount of war, no amount of death, no amount of destruction is going to show somebody like this that Daddy was wrong. Like, in my view, it really is like a really clear indicator that the first inclinations or the first instincts of a person living in a society is to defer to people in authority. It's like that appeal to authority idea, and that's a natural inclination, that the people in positions of power must be right or must be true. It's like deferring to your parents or deferring to your father, right? Deferring to them, and that you have to sort of discover as you go along that your parents are just people, right? That they're not gods, that what they say isn't sacred. It's just they're people. And I feel like that impulse is very strong. It's a very, very strong impulse. And which is like, you can see it. Young men will often just vote along with their fathers. And so young men will vote conservative, even though it completely runs counter to their own interests. And they'll just vote conservative because their dad told them to. And they'll have arguments for why they're voting conservative, but the real truth is that they're voting conservative because their dad told them to. And that's a very powerful force. Like that familial connection, that connection to family, and then the connection to power. It's very, 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 very persuasive on its own. And again, it all kind of flows into everything that I've been saying about what it is like to be living in this society, which is we are living in a hysteria. And a guy like Wing Wing is emblematic of that hysteria, that he's trying to present himself as rational when he's caught in a cult of hysteria. And that hysteria is having people grab hold of just anything that's floating by in this sort of manic demand to insist that everything's fine, right? Everything's fine. The system is fine. The structure is fine, right? These are the rules of the structure. These are the rules of the system, and everything's fine. It's you as the individual who needs to change, right? Like that's the heart of the hysteria. And it's Joe writes, plus they're told that communism is evil and the devil, hence religious overtones. I don't even think it's religious overtones anymore, man. I think it's a religion. Like I think that what we're looking at, and I've said it before on this chat, I'll continue saying it over and over again, because I think that this is the conversation that we should be having. Is that capitalism presents itself as a science or an economic system when it is exclusively and only a religious ideology. It doesn't have religious overtones. It's a religion. It's a religion unto itself. And it is an ideology of its own. And the ideology can be explored and studied and discussed, which is what I'm basically spending my time doing here. Right? That money is God. The self is Jesus, essentially, and the system of chaos, or the free market, is the Holy Spirit. Like, that's the trifecta. And we saw it here. This Wing Wing guy was just like babbling on about how markets are capitalism and trying to defend that. And it's like, yeah, that's part of the religion, right? That capitalism is trying to do everything it can to naturalize itself, right? Or to normalize itself. It's doing everything it can to try to convince you that natural, normal systems that arise out of humanity is actually capitalism. So that capitalism is seen as inextractable, right? that you can never move away from capitalism because capitalism is a natural, normal system that will always exist. Which is exactly what the monarchs said, which is exactly what the emperors of Rome said, right? That you can't move away from monarchies. Monarchies are the natural, normal way that business is done and how humans are. If you try to move away from monarchy, it'll be a disaster. It'll be complete. And it's just the same kind of thinking, that you can never extract yourself from the system of capital. If the system of capital co-opts systems such as the market, that arise out of humanity naturally. Like, if you have 3 people trading, that's a market. Like, it's not capitalism. It's just a market. It's like trying to say that reading a book is capitalism, or teaching kids how to ride a horse is capitalism, right? And what it fundamentally does, and the purpose of it, and there's a reason why this is done. The purpose for this is to deflect from serious conversation about what capitalism actually is, which is the private ownership of resources, so that everyone else has to sell themselves in order to gain access to those resources. That's what capitalism is. That's the core of it. But if you're constantly caught in this ridiculous religious conversation about markets, you can never actually point at the people who own everything and be like, why do they own everything? They shouldn't. Yeah, getting a good night's sleep is capitalism, exactly. If everything is capitalism, then capitalism can never be changed. You can never actually confront it, because breathing air is capitalism. Like, everything is capitalism. Oh, you criticize capitalism and yet you use computers. I am very smart. Hull writes, there's a popular lecturer on YouTube, Predictive History, and even he concluded that the overaccumulation of money damages the brain and kind of makes you a psycho. I laughed at it, but it's serious. Yeah. It's for a very simple reason, right? Like, if you have so much power that every problem is solvable with just using your power, you can't actually have real relationships. It's just not possible, right? Because you can always replace someone, right? You have so much wealth and so much power that you never need to have anyone around you who ever disagrees with you. And that if somebody is around you that disagrees with you or has something negative to say, you can just replace them, which is exactly what happens. And so you never actually have any kind of countervailing voice. You never actually have anybody in your life who's willing to be like, oh, wow, you're being kind of a son of a bitch, eh? Like, you're actually being kind of gross. Or like, this thing that you're doing, let's be nice. Let's be nice. You don't have anybody in your life who's willing to say to you, hey, this thing that you're doing that you think is good is actually causing a lot of harm over here. Like not even like the billionaire is being a psycho, just like the billionaire is doing something that they think is good. And they have nobody in their life to be like, but look at the harm it's creating over here. Shouldn't we do something about that? Or aren't you concerned about that? There's just nobody around them that's willing to do that. And if they were willing to do this, this is the other part about it, is that given the way the billionaires arise in the society and the way that they're structurally connected to everything, if Elon Musk were to suddenly like start giving money away to the poor, he would be extracted and be replaced with someone. The system of capital is such that selfishness is the center. That's the central virtue of capitalism. That selfishness is what matters. And if you start to display anything other than the utmost level of selfishness, then your stock prices start to go down. Then your value to the other capitalists begins to diminish. because you can't have empathy. Like, you can't have empathy being a capitalist. And there's, and it's like really common that people will say things like, oh, the more successful I got, the less empathetic I became. And the truth is that you were never empathetic. That you became successful because you didn't have the empathy. And that the empathy that you were displaying was just a song and dance. It was just a survival mechanism for you. And once you got into a position where you didn't have to use that survival mechanism, you stopped using it. Because it's not natural for you. Someone who never had empathy in the first place. The system rewards selfishness. The system rewards psychopathic behavior. And the accumulation of money, the mass accumulation of money, augments that and makes it even more impossible. Because eventually you literally can just surround yourself by yes men. And you never need to be confronted with anything. You don't actually live in a society. You don't actually live in a community. You are like akin to a weird sort of God king, where what you say goes, and all your dumb ideas you can do. You can just have your dumb ideas done. Like, really think of the weirdest idea you've ever had. And we're humans. We all have weird ideas and weird thoughts when we're alone in private, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. But imagine you had so much money that you could just make it a reality. You could just do it. And no one would be able to tell. Like, this is how you get Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. Like, that's how that happens. Right? It's just a bunch of creepy weirdos with too much money. JT writes, I bet monarch butterflies would be pissed to know what they're named after. They're collective butterflies. JT writes, duh, you trade words and ideas. Capitalism is human nature. Even animals do capitalism. Yeah, exactly. If you define capitalism by everything humanity does, then you never need to actually have a criticism of capitalism, right? Or you can actively say the dead-brained idea that the system of capital can never be moved away from. It's this normalization, right? The normalization of the perverse. And, like, the concept of capitalism as a system is just very perverse. Let's have a small group of people own everything, and we'll all sell ourselves to those people. No. Like, no, that's just a bad idea that I'm not going to continue forward on. In positive news, Dick Cheney died. Dick Cheney, one of the architects of the Iraq War. The fact that he was not drawn up on charges and sent to The Hague is pretty much all the evidence you need to see how corrupt the system of American capital is. Probably one of the most evil men in modern history. Like, so very clearly doing everything he was doing to enrich himself and his own family. Pretty nakedly. The Iraq War doesn't make sense otherwise. Like, it's just kind of incomprehensible otherwise. JT says his penguin-like smirk says it all. Yeah, he does look like, wah, wah, wah. Hold on. That's hilarious, dude, because it's so the truth. Hold on. 1960s Batman penguin. For sure. Like, totally. Hold on, where is it? There it is. Wah, 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 wah. That's a better one. Wah, wah, wah. Anyway. Hossein writes, communism is an extension of family values to a nation. What's wrong with that? Yeah, I mean, look, at its heart, communism is just a statement that says everybody should have access to basic resources. Like, at its heart, that's really what it's about. It's just the observation that everyone needs food and shelter, and therefore everyone should have food and shelter. And that to become a communist, you just need to start asking the questions, why doesn't everyone have access to food and shelter? And when you get the answers for why people should not have access to food and shelter, those explanations should offend you. Knuffle, I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, bud, but hope you're here to be beautiful. The Penguin would have been a better vice president. I mean, I think he would have been a better vice president because he wouldn't have been able to get anything done. Like, Dick Cheney got a lot of shit done. And it was a lot of shit he shouldn't have. At least the Penguin was anti-cop. That's hilarious. Speaking of Batman, there's a run of Absolute Batman. Graphic content incoming, just so you're aware. This is kind of gross, but it's gross in like a cartoonish sort of way. So just, if you are sensitive to physical violence, be aware. But this is a frame from the new Absolute Batman run, where this is what Batman thinks of white supremacists. I love that there is very obviously this new generation of idiots who are like, oh, look at them, they're turning Superman woke, they're turning Batman woke, they're turning all of these things woke. And it's like, these guys have always been this way. It has always been well understood within the ethos of Batman and Superman and all of these heroes, including like X-Men, the Marvel heroes, that they are explicitly, quote-unquote, woke. Yeah, oh my god, Batman is anti-slavery now? They ruined him. Yeah, like, they've always been this way. Hossein says, did you see the communist Superman? Are you saying, is that the Red Sun run? Hossein, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, Absolute Batman, not a billionaire, kicks asses all right. So, I consider Red Sun to be one of the most grotesque versions of liberal propaganda probably ever made. Superman Red Sun. For those of you who don't know, there was a comic book run that was turned into a cartoon, Superman Red Sun. They I don't know if they're doing a live action, but they did like an animated version, a cartoon version. The point of Superman Red Sun, the question of Superman Red Sun is, what would happen if Superman landed in the Soviet Union instead of America? And this is it's an interesting conceit, I think. It's an interesting idea, worthy of exploration. There were two major, like, crimes that I would say that I'm happy to call crimes. The first major glaring one that is literally like, oh, send these people to the Hague. Like, they should go to prison for this. The first one is the exclusion of the Nazis. That to me was just like, oh, like, this story literally omits and deletes from the history of the world the existence of Adolf Hitler and the existence of the Nazis. They simply do not factor into the story. It's like, oh, so this is Nazi apologetics. Like, this is that's how you
successfully get away with Nazi apologetics, right? That's the cleanest, easiest way to do Nazi apologetics, is to simply omit the Nazis, is to pretend as though all of the actions that everybody else was doing are grotesque and odd and strange and weird because the threat that they were all responding to is eliminated. It would be like editing a horror movie while omitting the monster, right? Like, go through like any Friday the 13th movie and edit out all the scenes with Jason, or like a Freddy Krueger movie, and just edit out all the scenes with Freddy Krueger and just show the scenes with the protagonist reacting. And what you're going to end up with is a story where a white woman loses her mind. And you can look at it and be like, what was her problem? What a weirdo, right? And all you have to do to achieve that result, to put all of the criticism on the victim, is to omit the monster, is to omit who the person, the antagonist and the aggressor in the story actually is. And Superman Red Son does that, right? That it just eliminates the Nazis completely. And so already you're setting it up so that Stalin is this monster. Okay. So the second crime that they do is they set Stalin up to be a monster. Superman kills Stalin in the story because Stalin built... Like, when you say it out loud, it sounds as stupid as it gets. Stalin built underground, like, salt mines that he first had encased in lead so that Superman couldn't find them, and then populated those salt mines with slaves. That's the story. Like, I know it's a comic book, and I know it's like a cartoon movie, but how cartoonish can you get? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense, first of all. Like, if they were so desperate for the resources in order to, for the glory of the Soviet Union or whatever, why not have Superman just get them? What, Superman can only fight big bad guys? Superman can't just collect some iron for you quickly? He can't get some salt quickly? And, like, so you're building this mine encased in lead, and Superman just doesn't notice? He just doesn't notice this? Oh, okay. And so it's, like, so obviously stupid on the face of it. It's just obviously dumb. And yet it's like the crux of the story. It's why Joseph's... It's the justification that the story uses to have Superman kill Joseph Stalin. Is that Joseph Stalin used slaves for some reason in this situation. It's like, is there even a parody? Like, is there Stalin doing something like this in life? And the best you could probably come up with is like the Gulag. And it's like, yeah, where they put the Nazis, you mean? And like criminals, you mean? Like a prison, right? Yeah, okay. So that has nothing to do with what we're being shown here. Yeah, and then Stalin twirls his mustache, exactly, right? Yeah, if the Soviets have a Superman, why need slaves? Yeah, exactly. And then the story just gets creepier and creepier and like weirder and weirder. That like Lex Luthor creates his own version of a Superman who is essentially a slave that he tortures to death. And so grotesque is what Lex Luthor doing that his wife Lois Lane leaves him. And this is supposed to be like the kind of hero of the story, and that the central crux of the conflict, or the rising tension of the conflict, is that somehow Lex Luthor is you know what? There's just a lot of telling and not showing. There's a lot of like just statements that are made that you just don't see. It's like statements like everyone has to think the same thoughts, and it's like, am I seeing that? Is that a real thing that exists? And like, nobody here in the Soviet Union is free. Meanwhile, like, everything looks clean and everyone's well fed. Everyone has access to resources. And so it does take on this kind of cartoon, like, you have to begin with the proposition that we hate the Soviets in order for Superman Red Sun to make any sense at all. And the more I think about Superman Red Sun, the more I'm just like, these guys are clumsy at this. Like, this is clumsy, dumbass propaganda, but we're a clumsy, dumbass people. Like, it's easy for us to believe these things because for some reason we're just very gullible. Yeah, a show for all the wing-wings. Yeah, exactly. A show for all the wing-wings of the world. Like, we're a lot of preaching to the choir, right? And like, the Superman does make some interesting statements that if you snip out of context are like good pro-Soviet propaganda, basically. But the only reason they have Superman saying these things is so that they can try to undercut them. So that they can say, oh yeah, of course that's what he'll say, but look at what he does. Like, look at how the Soviets actually were. Right? They had underground lead-covered salt mines that they didn't actually have. So it's this. That's why I fundamentally think that Superman Red Sun is a crime. The omission of the Nazis, the overt perversion of basic historical fact, like the Stalin that is presented in Superman Red Sun is like, I know that they're not doing like a historical drama or anything, but it's so obviously a hit piece that it's just embarrassing. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, XD. But my Uyghurs. Yeah, exactly. And we're just like, and again, it flows into why the rest of the world is no longer taking us seriously. That as we are diminishing in economic power, and we are diminishing in economic power, I've got literally the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem said that we should begin to accept a lower standard of living here in Canada. So we are declining economically. And we're declining economically because all the resources are being siphoned away to a small group of psychopaths that a guy like Wing Wing just denies their existence or tries to justify. And so because we're in this economic decline, it's putting us in a military decline because we can no longer afford our military. And it means that all we really have left is ideological argumentation, right? Is to make statements in the world and to have people contend with those statements. Because we're getting to the point now where we can no longer impose economic sanctions seriously. We can no longer impose military force seriously. And so what remains is argumentation, right? To show our superiority through the truth of our arguments. But our arguments are so clownish on the face of it, at the beginning of it. Like, we make a statement, and it's just so cartoonishly wrong that the rest of the world just is starting to look at us the way that a grandfather might look at a child making statements, with just this kind of like the way that Xi Jinping looks at people with that kind of smiling face, right? Xi Jinping. Like, there's one face in particular that I'm really thinking of. Like, any Wing Wing says something. Xi Jinping. Just like, and it really is getting to the point now where the rest of the world is realizing that they no longer need to respond. that they can just like it's like that meme where there's a group of people talking to one another and somebody's off on the side and says like some kind of criticism or some kind of thing, and then one of the people like gives them a thumb up, and then they just go back to talking to one another and ignore this guy. That's basically what's happening in the world. And because we keep releasing like Red Sun, and because we keep releasing just the most backward propaganda you've ever seen in your life. The Uyghur genocide is a big one, if you ask me. That if we keep pounding that pulpit and we keep trying to move forward with that, the rest of the world is just going to be like, these guys are fucking clowns. And because we're deeply unserious people. We don't have a grip on reality. We're not responding rationally to what's going on in the world, and we're in an emotional hysteria. And for those of us that are somewhat aware of it, we're kind of left in this position of just like, well, I guess I have to get on with my life and just live in this reality surrounded by monkeys screaming. And that's it. That's what we've got. JT writes, the blazing rate is going to sideline everyone. I know to expect it happening really quick, but it's still hard to fathom. I don't think I understand your comment, JT. Like the blazing rate? Like you mean everyone's going to smoke weed? Dave says, basically the Bank of Canada is saying keep working until you died. Yeah. I mean, if it was up to the capitalists, we would all be literal slaves, right? Like slavery is the natural state of capitalism. That if the capitalists could get away paying $0, they would. They would just be like, yeah, go to work, we pay you nothing, we have to give you no resources, and you do that until you die. That would be the preferred arrangement for the capitalists. JT writes, the rate of collapse. So the rate of collapse is going to sideline everyone. Yeah. Oh, I understand what you mean, JT. Yeah, like we all know it's happening, and in many ways we've seen it kind of begin to happen. But you're right. Like, as it happens, it's going to happen so swiftly that even people like myself are going to really struggle to respond to it. Like, it's going to be difficult to watch the natural outcome occur and to be able to have a clear-eyed response, right? And I think it's going to be because it's happening. So, like, I mean, I haven't even talked about what's going on with Snap, right? Like, hold on. Yeah. Like, what's happening with the SNAP benefits? Like, to me, this is unfathomable, right? It's unbelievable that any government anywhere would actually remove its policies to feed its own citizens. Like, this to me is going to be... This is going to be seen as one of the largest disasters in modern American history. Like, 40 million people are using SNAP benefits. Yeah, longest government shutdown in history, by the way. Yeah. Like, the Republicans want such a small... They argue in favor of small government. What's smaller than no government? Like, we all know that this SNAP benefit situation doesn't need to happen. That the SNAP program is well funded. They could release these resources at any time. That they're choosing not to. And I think what is being revealed is that the capitalists are psychos. Like, they're starving people because they can. And for no other reason. Knuffel writes, it's insane. Here in Germany, the government also reacts to the economic downfall by cutting workers' rights, giving less money to people in need of a caregiver and the old. Yeah. Like, and anything to protect the wealth of the wealthy. Anything, literally anything. There's no because it's a religious ideology, right? Because it's not about distributing goods to the society. It's not about increasing the well-being of the society. It's about increasing the number in a bank account of a small group of donors, and that's it. JT writes, all the NATO nations are more linked than many in those nations want to realize. Yeah, I mean, the question about NATO is, like, when is it going to have the serious moment of, like NATO is doing a lot of harm to Europe, I think. That it's really, the decisions that NATO are making are very terminal. Like the whole situation that happened in Ukraine, it's completely NATO's fault, and there's no reason for them to have done it. Like, to me, that's the most embarrassing part. That the people within the NATO nations are going to have to pay for that, but the capitalists are the ones that are going to go in and extract value from the post-war Ukrainian economy. Right? That Ukraine as like an entity is just going to be completely decimated. And it's going to turn into like a slave state run by Nazis. And that's really what's going to happen. The administration wants food riots to justify greater violence. I mean, that's possible. It's just so... like, it's so emblematic of the moment that, what have I been saying the entire time? Extraction and then abandonment. Well, here's the abandonment. That we're not even going to offer the small, tiny little pittance of SNAP. And somebody is going to hear this and be like, well, but SNAP was billions of blah, blah, blah. The American economy is like tens of trillions of dollars. Like, the amount of money that they were spending on SNAP is a drop in the bucket. But we're getting so addicted and so hyper-violent that we can't... that every little bit, it's every single drop, squeezing blood from the stone. Hall says, so many MAGAs regretting their votes. Brain dead idiots, shaking my head. I heard people have started self-deleting due to the SNAP situation. Of course. No, of course. Like, there's 100% people who are just basically hanging on by a thread, and that SNAP benefits were like the thing keeping them in the game. And so you have this like complete and total incoherence coming out of the Trump administration. Like, one of the big justifications they have for getting rid of Roe v. Wade. It's like, we need future people to run the economy, so we can't have women. It's like, okay, cool. So you cut SNAP benefits, so now suicide rate's gone up. Which is like a very obvious outcome. Like, it's obviously the case that if you cut people's SNAP benefits, they're going to kill themselves. Like, that's very clearly the case. Like, oh, you cut people's SNAP benefits, and then theft went up. Like, yeah, pretty clear. But I also think it's also gotten pretty clear that this idea is happening along racial lines. That the people who are making the decisions are not making the decisions imagining that the people getting SNAP benefits are white. I think that it's been made pretty clear that the people who are imagining SNAP benefits getting cut, it's happening to black and brown people. And again, it kind of flows back to this American mania, this American obsession with race, and that the racial divide is so inextractable in the American consciousness. It can't possibly be the case that that people just need access to food and shelter. It has to be that they're lazy or that they're misusing their SNAP benefits. That's a good one. Because people who are pro-genocide are exactly the people that you want to hear about who's using or misusing something. JT says, hence all the fake AI videos of non-existing black people and the food stamp vids because they have to appeal to non-reality. Yeah. Peanut Butter Beatrice says, repealing the 19th Amendment is apparently next on Mega's wish list after how many women voted last night too. Yeah. All right, but most are whites, right? Coming from the red states. Yeah. No, it just has to be, right? Like, it just has to be the case that most of the people using SNAP benefits are white because most of the people in America are white. Yeah, Mark says, if only they knew SNAP recipients' majority is children in school. Like, this decision, should it persist, because they could, like, pull back on it and just be like, okay, go here. But should this persist for even 2 months, 3 months? Like, you're looking at a situation where kids are going to have to get pulled out of school because they're going to have to put those kids to work. And you're looking at a situation where your next generation of people are just not going to be competent. Like, you think the incompetence in America is bad now. Like, just wait. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is moving on. Like, the rest of the world is moving on. And it's not going to be too much longer. I've said this over and over again. And one day I'm just going to be able to point. I mean, I could sort of do it now, but it's going to be so grotesque and so outrageous that I'm literally just going to be able to point at one thing that the Chinese are doing, because it's obviously going to be the Chinese, and be like, you think your system of capital is working, my man? Like, right now you could point at their transit system, the high-speed rail system. You could point at their thorium reactors. You could point at the fact that the Chinese have taken over basically every single industry of note. You could point at their moon base operations. You could point at their solar farms, their EV. Like, there's so many things that you could point at and just be like, and you think your country is serious? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Mark says, they say the immigrants are using up all the SNAP, but every immigrant I know from South and Central America literally works 2 to 3 jobs to avoid, depending on the government. Yeah. Like, it's just cruelty, right? It's just cruelty. And it's cruelty coming from a ideological space, right? That what is being said, the economic argument that's being said is, just get a job. Stop depending on the government, right? It's exactly that. Stop being a dependent. Go get a job. As if there are just jobs hanging out all over the place. As if the Epstein class is just handing out jobs, right? And like, what's so funny about that is that they'll say just go get a job, but then they'll also say that the capitalists are the job creators. So it's like, well, which is it? Is it that the capitalists aren't creating the jobs, or is it that the people aren't getting jobs? Which one of these two realities actually exists in your mind? And the truth is that they don't exist in reality, right? That it's any excuse that they can use to get at the core issue, which is to decimate the weak and the vulnerable. But what they're doing is they're planting the seeds for revolution. That's really what they're doing. Like, you want to radicalize people? You want people to be radicalized against you? Have them experience hunger. Have them watch their loved ones experience hunger. Like, you want to see what true radicalization looks like? Like, there's this very famous and very popular quote that I'm definitely butchering here, but it's most societies are only 3 missed meals away from revolution. Well, here's your SNAP benefits. Like, sure, there's a lot of people that are going to commit suicide over that. Sure, there's a lot of crime that's going to happen. But boy, howdy, is there going to be a lot of people who get together and form unions and form coalitions and form organizations to fight back against this, for sure. Yeah, starving people is the way to get people to rise up against you. Yeah. And like, imagine if this was happening in literally any other country. Like, imagine if this was happening in China. Imagine if it was happening in Russia. Imagine if it was happening in Venezuela. Like, what would the propaganda system have to say? What would the propaganda system have to say? XD writes, every one of those turban rebellions happened due to people having empty stomachs in ancient China. Yeah. Hull writes, fake job posts all over the place on them job hunting sites as well. Yeah, what a dystopia. Literally working against its own citizens. F me. Yeah. The only reason they put up those job posts is to pretend as though there's some activity happening when there isn't. It's just to make sure a line goes up. That's all. Oh, well, this company is looking for more people. They must be doing really well. It's a fake posting, right? Just to get gullible boomers to believe something's still happening. And like, the boomers are gullible, man. Like, they still think everything is how it was when they were 20, and it isn't. I actually like work with a boomer, and I've just learned to not really engage them because the things that they're saying are so dumb and just so outside of what is actually happening in the world. It's like, oh, you've just been insulated. Like, you're just completely insulated from the reality of what's happening around you. And so we just watch the collapse. Yeah, which is sad because the boomer generation now have high rates of homeless elders. Yeah, like, the boomers will be abandoned, right? Like, that's it's like a movie, right? Like, it's just like a movie of a person who's like, he was a Wall Street guy and he had that attitude of oh, go get a job and you're just being lazy and all of this. And then through just like a series of events that are completely outside of his control, he ends up homeless. And he has to end up dealing with people saying to him the very things that he said to other people. It's just like, because they don't want to admit, you know, like they don't want to admit that the system is turning against us and that the society is turning against itself. And it's turning against itself based on very clear capitalist lines, which is that there's a small group of owners and then there's the rest of us that need to sell ourselves to them. And for some reason, some of the people who have to sell themselves are fighting on behalf of the owners. Like, that to me is the wild part. I can respect and understand somebody being like kind of beaten down and kind of just getting into a place where they're like, look, this is just kind of how it is. Right? Yeah, there's owners. Sure. But like, what are we going to do? How do we so just, you know, do your work and live your life and everything will be fine. That position I can kind of respect. I can respect a person just learning how to cope with it. But these people who are actually arguing in favor of the system of capital, who are actually defending capitalists, that's how you know it's a religion and that they just want to be on the inside of it. That it's not any different than somebody being like, Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment. That the goodness of your heart will be revealed by the second coming of Christ. Christ thinks that you are bad, and so you have to repent for your sins. It's just the same shit. Ironic now, boomers in former Soviet states are more aware than the younger generations. Well, I mean, a big part of that is that if you're a boomer living in a former Soviet state, you've experienced both. Right? You had your taste of communism, and now you're having your taste of capitalism, and it's getting pretty obvious which one of these two you'd prefer to have, that I'm pretty much of the opinion that the only thing that's keeping the capitalist systems lurching forward in these former Soviet states is that the capitalists within these former Soviet states are aware that if they try to put too much pressure on the public will overthrow them. So in many cases, they're playing ball, right? It's that social democrat argument that, if we just put pressure on them, we can do piecemeal reformism and vote our way out of capitalism, right? And so as long as the capitalists feel threatened, they're willing to play ball. And if I was operating in a former Soviet state right now, I would be willing to play ball. But we've lost the plot completely. Like, we've lost the plot totally. Yeah, Russia's infrastructure pretty much thrives off the legacy of the USSR. Yeah, of course. And that'll be the case until the capitalists there start to dismantle it, which is the goal, right? That you again, capitalists despise institutional power. That the only institution that should exist is my wealth, and that's it. That the wealth that I have is the only institution that should exist. I just never thought I would be alive to see them actually go after Snap. You know? Like, I always sort of thought that they would go after Roe v. Wade. I always thought that they would go after even, like, the civil rights legislation, right? Like, I always sort of thought that they would do that. But going after Snap really reveals a dark stupidity and a dark, an incomprehensible incoherence. It's a stupid thing to do. Just like from a ruling perspective. Like, if you're the king of a people, you don't want to do this. Like, you don't want to do this. It's such a bad idea from any angle you look at it. Like, what do you think is going to actually happen here? And the thing that's the most embarrassing for the mega crowd is that this is going to hurt the red states the most. Like, a state like California is going to create a program like SNAP. That's one of the arguments that these guys use, right? Is that, this should be a state thing. This shouldn't be a federal program. It should be the states that do this. Okay. That means that blue states, like California, that are producing more economic output and actually support many of the red states through a federal program like this, are going to create a program like SNAP. And it means, like, Mississippi, Louisiana, red states that are taker states that don't produce enough into the federal system and take more than they produce, well, they're not going to be able to create SNAP. And so all of the poor people who live in these states are going to have to leave. And they're going to flee. And where are they going to flee to? Oh, they're going to go to California. Right? And when they go to California, the amount of labor and the productivity that they bring to the table is going to go towards California. And you're just going to see a general emptying out. And people just living in this kind of impoverished state, even more so than they already are. And yeah, it does. It balkanizes the states even more. Because if you remove unifying policies, right? Like, SNAP is a unifying project. It's a project that unifies the nation. It brings the nation together. That, sure, we might have our disagreements, but we all agree that everybody should have access to food and shelter. Well, here's a moment where huge sections of the populace are saying, no, they shouldn't. Okay, Well, you're just killing your country. Like you're destroying your country. Pretty nakedly. My money is still on Texas, but it could be California. Like, eventually there just comes a point where things just get so grotesque and so ridiculous and so stupid that Californians will start to say, why are we paying federal taxes exactly? Like, what is this for? Like, what is this for? What do we actually get for this? Because that's a big thing that people have been saying. Like, if they're going to cut all our services, why are we still paying taxes? Right? I already see that happening. If they're going to cut all our services, why are we still paying taxes? Why are you still paying taxes? Who are you paying taxes to? For what? What are you getting? If the answer is nothing, because, like, amidst this SNAP benefit cut, we're sending, what, $40 billion to Argentina, another $20 billion to the genocide in Gaza, and Donald Trump is throwing a party at Mar-a-Lago? Like, what are you looking at? And yet we all wake up and we go to work for some reason. That's my favorite. Everybody just goes to work. Like, it's normal. Everybody just wakes up and is just like, well, time to go work this pointless job that only impoverishes my nation. Because that's all we're doing now. Everything is just about impoverishing each other. And at every level. Yep, unions protect the lazy, my friend. Just keep your head down. Like, meanwhile, I'm of the opinion that these people have lost the right to govern, right? Like, these people have lost the right to have control. Like, here in Canada, like, here's the real cost of inflation in Canada. Here's the owners of your system, right? And I'm of the opinion that these people should be removed from their positions. That Galen Weston, Eric LaFleche, Michael Medline, they should just not own these places. And they should not have control of them. Because I think they've lost the right to have control of them. And that these places should be nationalized. And then eventually turned into worker co-ops, basically. And that Galen Weston, LaFleche, and Medlin should have literally nothing to do with it. They should have no connection, no ownership, no shares, no anything. They've lost the right to own. Yeah, meanwhile, you have Trump on 60 Minutes saying that he doesn't care how long the government shutdown lasts. Yep. So I think that they're more or less priming a civil war, right? Like, that the Trump administration's really been trying to get people to fight back, right? And now they've found a way to, like, really stoke the flames. Oh, we can go into this area because there's all crime and they're stealing. And yeah, of course they are. They're starving. You're starving them. Right? And of course they're going to go into black neighborhoods. That's the whole point. Like, this whole thing is about suppressing the black population, as always. Right? No, it's nothing new there. So it's just whether or not anybody wants to respond rationally to it. And of course they don't. That what we're going to see is a pendulum swing back towards the Democrats, and the Democrats are basically just going to be like, okay, we won't send military troops into black neighborhoods as long as you blacks keep working on behalf of corporate power for shitty wages. And that'll literally be what happens, right? That's the negotiation that's occurring in America today. That the choice is actually between militant, theocratic-minded people who are literally going to send troops into your home to round citizens up and send them to concentration camps, versus people who won't do that as long as you remain quiet and accept the shitty wages that you get. That's your choice. Welcome to America, land of the free. Well, I think I'm going to end this one a little early, guys. We're getting on to about 8:30 now. It's getting crazier out there, you know? It's getting crazier out there. And it's getting sillier. And the people who are defending the system are getting sillier. I hope each and every one of you is doing really lovely. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.